I want to give you guys a tour of how we run parts through the shop here at Ameribrade. We manufacture over 300 components that we design and build ourselves in addition to the parts we source and buy. One of the biggest challenges is just keeping them in inventory. Where we start with that, these simple little cards that tell us when we're running low on something and when it's time to order material and get the process started. So that's the first step in the system, is when these cards show up, it's time to get to work. Once the machine shop orders the amount of material they need, we try to work in as big of batches as we can to be efficient, but we're working with space limitations working out of my home shop, so we can only build so much and store so much. But even still, you can check out the material yard here, what sort of batch sizes we deal with at this shop. We order multiple bundles of steel tubing at a time for our accessory arms, lots of aluminum as well for all of our wheels and aluminum billet components. So once the trucks show up, we try to keep everything out of the yard and maintain some parking for the employees out here. But you can see we have a pretty good variety of materials we run through the shop here. So you may be thinking, that's not the most official material storage, and it definitely is not. It is exposed to the elements. One thing, we're lucky we're in the high desert. It's pretty dry, so we don't have a lot of rust to deal with. But two, none of this stuff sits here long. As soon as it's in here, it's in queue to go get brought into the shop. So we bring it from here onto our saw and get it cut up and prepped for the machines. So let's get out of this crazy desert wind and go check out where this stuff gets cut up. So they drop it onto these rollers with the forklift, and they're able to get it through the roll-up doors into the saw. So here's Old Faithful, our auto-feeding Amada horizontal bandsaw, and you kind of just get to set it and forget it and walk away, which is pretty nice because it runs for a long time. Good equipment like this makes your life a lot easier. We just let it all drop off into baskets right here in front. Once this basket is full, it's time for it to start the next leg of its journey off into the magical world of our machine shop. So we've got 4 CNC lathes. 3 of them are bar fed, which is a really efficient way to automate, really simple, as long as the material is small enough to fit through the spindle of the lathe. And then for bigger stuff that we want to automate, we have a really cool machine that we love around here, the Takasawa. This is a gantry fed machine that is able to use a robotic arm to grab chunks of material from a stack, load it in the spindle, and unload the finished parts and stack those and run automated for parts up to about 6.3 inch diameter. A lot of our aluminum hubs run through there. The other 2 machines back here are some of our vertical machining centers, our mills. Our Haas VF5 SS is some of our larger envelope work. It's not as fast, but it gives us a lot more space to run multiple setups or larger setups. We've got 2 Brother Speedio machining centers we love those. They're super fast, nimble, and they're just fun to watch work with how fast the accelerations are. You can ridge and tap a hole at 6,000 RPM, and that really cranks up the efficiency in here. Parts will go to whichever one of these machines or multiple machines, depending on which processes they go through, and leapfrog their way through the machine shop. And once they are done being machined, they either go out for outside process or go straight back into inventory if they don't have any coatings or anything they need, and back onto the shelves. A lot of our parts, if they're steel and they need some sort of corrosion resistance, they go out for black oxide coating or powder coating. Some of our aluminum parts, just to make them pretty, we send out for anodizing. And then platens get sent out for heat treat and surface grinding. So we do have 1 manual machine for some of our prototype work when we don't want to write a CNC program and just need to do some quick machining work. That's kind of outside of the normal process. Normal process, for any of the parts that get stored like this, they all get put away in predefined bins. The cards tell us when it's time to make them again. Ideally, everything is sitting here on the shelf ready for our assembly guys, so that they can just walk up and grab parts from the bins in the predefined locations where they know they're at and stay busy. So I'll show you kind of where they work. So working in a pretty small shop, we've had to cram as many work cells efficiently into every corner we can. This is where Ron builds some of the more complex assemblies. He builds our surface grinders, the 2x48, the fully adjustable tables. All the parts for that stuff are kept around here. This whole shelf is all surface grinder parts. Some of the assemblies are so complicated, you'd spend so much of your time going and getting the parts and tools you need. We also have what's called build boxes, and that speeds up the process a lot. Let me show you one of those over here. Well, the 2x48 has a lot of specialty hardware that we don't use on the other machines. So instead of having to go grab that where we keep the bulk inventory, we keep a small amount of that inventory in these build boxes. That way when it's time to build 2x48s, you can grab this whole box and have enough hardware to get you through the day while you're building those. This is where stuff starts getting ready to leave this end of the shop and then getting ready to roll out the door. Before it does, we've got 3 assembly benches over here, one pretty specifically for wiring. There's a lot of time spent wiring the motors and testing them to give the best chance of them showing up without issues for you guys ready to go. There's a few things we check while we're wiring. One, we make sure it's set up for the proper voltage, all the settings are set approximately right, but then we actually hook up every speed controller to our test motor, make sure the rotation direction is correct, and we also set the maximum speed and accelerations appropriately because these VFDs are capable of overspeeding the motor, which one is bad for the bearings, but 2, you lose a lot of power. The torque curve on these motors drops off drastically if you try to overspeed them. They hit a threshold, so we use a tachometer on the test motor to test every VFD to make sure it's putting out the proper maximum speed. And then for the motors, we do the same thing but on our test VFD. So we plug every motor into our test speed controller, make sure the direction is right, and make sure we're getting the proper speed out of it. I had referenced our bulk hardware storage. So this is where a local hardware company that we love called High Desert Fasteners, they have made our life a lot easier by keeping this stuff stocked up for us. A huge variety of nuts, bolts, washers, springs, and specialty hardware that they are kind enough to come in multiple times a week to see what we're running low on and keep us stocked up. And then we keep intermediate assemblies over here on the shelf that go into bigger assemblies just because it's too hard to build an entire assembly all at once. There's too many parts that go into it, so we break it up into bite-sized pieces, but then you need somewhere to keep those bite-sized pieces. So we've got a few shelves in the assembly area to keep those. When you've got 300 components that go into the products you're trying to ship, any single one of those can hold up shipping, and you've got a whole crew of guys sitting around not being able to get stuff out the door because of one silly thing. It doesn't matter how silly it is, the product's not complete without it, and your whole system shuts down. So it is incredibly important to be warned with enough time to get those products back in stock before you completely run out of them. We have our laser engraving station over here. The assembly guys can handle this process. As they're getting ready to assemble things, they can throw some important information on with the laser engraver or just some logos and markings to make stuff look cool. This little cart right here is where we've crammed another workstation into a corner, and it's got a couple presses for pushing bearings into all of our wheels, pushing studs into the knobs that we make. We go through thousands of bearings. I probably ordered a few thousand bearings a month to go into all of our wheels, so this is a pretty heavily used area. This bench is where all the fastback frames get assembled. There's been a lot of frames assembled on this bench. On this side, most of the stuff here is product that's ready to ship, that the shipping employees can come over and just grab, slap a label on, or throw in a box with some other products and get out the door. There's no more assembly that should need to go into anything sitting on this side. All of our different platens, rotary platens, tilting platens, 4-inch combo platens, 6-inch combo platens, sharpening attachments, small wheel holders, all just ready to grab and go. And then some work rests, accessory arms, and work rest arms. And then small wheels, all 9 sizes with bearings already pressed on, ready to go, individually or in kits. Even though we aren't a belt company, we try to offer the most common belts to help people conveniently get going. So we keep, as much as we can fit, we keep a variety of belt kits available for you guys to be able to grab from us. And we've also got some merch. We got some shirts up top. Across the aisle, you end up in shipping. So these guys are constantly going back and forth across from each other. Once grinders get built, they all get put on this stand, which we built a long time ago, back when we had only a plasma table and no laser cutter. We put a test motor on the grinder, line it up, run it with our master accessory to check tracking, so we're not introducing the variable of different accessories every time. Once the shipping guys grab it and get it out the door, that's pretty much it. Hopefully that gives you a little insight into how crazy it is over here and how much we're trying to do out of this space to try to bring you guys the best stuff that we're capable of here. We're always trying to improve our processes to give you guys the best products that we know how to do. So back outside here, we got an example of something that we do make ourselves, but not at this location. So when we brought laser cutting in-house, we thought we were gonna do it here, but as you saw, we're pretty short on room room around here. So we ended up having to get a different shop to house our laser cutter and the guys who do all that type of fabrication. Anything that's laser cut, bent, welded gets handled at our different shop, and then it ends up coming back here. The laser shop where we make all this stuff is actually only about 10 minutes down the road. So let's go check that out and see where we make this. All right, we're over here at the laser shop. We call it HD Laser Service because we cut other people's parts too. We originally bought the laser cutter before we even had a place to put it. We thought we were gonna put it at my house. And then when we figured out that we had no room for it and not enough electricity, we started the mad hunt for a commercial building before the laser showed up, and we were lucky enough to find this beautiful place. So I'm gonna show you around. The first laser we bought was a 3 kilowatt bow door. It's a combo machine, so we're able to do our sheet laser on this side, and it's also got a tube cutting side as well, so that we can cut all of our pedestal stands, tension arms, and anything else that we can think of that utilizes tubes. We've got a shuttle table. Someone can be loading and unloading sheets outside of the machine while it's cutting parts inside. So we'll get a little deeper in and I'll show you some more. Even after we bought this place, it quickly filled up. You'll see that we were pretty silly for thinking we could fit all this stuff over at my house, because this entirely new shop is completely packed full again. We've got our original press brake that did used to be at my house. This is what we used to bend all of our parts on, was this Bailey 30-ton semi-CNC press brake. Of course, we've got a classic here. We save ourselves some of the old hand-me-downs for our own use, but it just keeps trucking along. This thing runs a lot. Even though lasers do a beautiful job cutting, you always need a belt grinder around the shop for a lot of reasons. One, just being stuff doesn't always turn out perfect, and you don't want to scrap a part just because it's got one little problem spot that you just need to touch up really quick. Also, you can get some spray back from the slats where you get some spatter of metal on the underside. You may need to do some weld prep if you're cutting with oxygen and you need to clean up the edges for TIG welding, or just aluminum doesn't cut as clean as oxygen cut steel, so you may just want to get a beautiful edge that you couldn't otherwise get right off the laser. Stuff doesn't fit perfectly, so you just need to, because it wasn't drawn properly, so you just need to take a little bit off. Or if someone just wants a grained face, you can, that's too small to run through the wide belt sander, you can face it on here. Or if you want to edge round some contours that a big fancy machine can't even get to, it's just a super universal machine that you're going to always end up using. This is what I was saying was our first laser. This is the 3 kilowatt, and we've ran countless sheets through this thing. It's been a workhorse. Over here, like I said, is the sheet side. It's a 3 kilowatt fiber laser. We can cut with oxygen, nitrogen, or compressed air. And then what's cool about the combo machine is the cutting head can travel over on the gantry to this side, where we can cut tubes as well. Yeah, super universal machine. Really let us get our feet wet in the laser world and have a lot of capabilities at a pretty affordable entry-level price. Right on this side, this is where we cut our pedestal pillars. You know, to take that tube and put all those features in all 4 sides, it would be a pretty time-consuming process if you didn't have one of these machines. So that's how we do the pedestal pillars, and that's also how we do our tension arms. If you look up on the top of the grinder, that tube that is tensioning the belt is cut right here on this as well. Every frame, every other bracket, everything is all cut on the sheet side over here too. Several of our parts come off of the laser and go to one of our tapping stations. We've got a couple of these servo tapping arms that are super handy. We've used a few different methods of tapping over the years. Used to use a manual mill with a tapping head on it, which is really fast. It's just fixturing parts can get a little tricky. The nice thing about one of these arms on the table, it can float to wherever the hole is. You don't have to align really accurately over the hole like you would on a manual mill. We used to have to tie up a CNC machine to just load a laser cut part that just needs a tapped hole. So this, we can cut a hole right off the laser accurately enough. We don't have to chase it with a drill or a reamer or anything, and we can just run a tap right through it. We kind of treat the two companies separately. Ameribrade orders its parts from over here just to keep things organized. So we order them on an as-needed basis from ourselves. They try to keep stuff stocked and ready over here too, so they can fulfill our orders quickly, so that they don't have to stop what they're doing working on other customers' parts to keep Ameribrade fed. So we've got a bunch of Ameribrade parts on here just ready to go. 2x48 risers, switch brackets, surface grinder spark shields, surface grinder chucks, fastback spark shields, 2x48 tension arms, tracking tabs, hyperdisc safety flanges, 2x48 work rests, frames. There's a lot of parts we gotta make. I lose track of how much stuff we actually make around here. It's overwhelming without a good system. This was a new machine we bought once we had this building as well. This is a servo press brake, which is nice because it's quiet. Instead of hearing a hydraulic pump running in the background, it's actually servo driven. Underneath this cover, it's pretty cool if you want to nerd out on some of this geeky mechanical stuff. There's a bunch of pulleys and belts serpentining all through here, and that's how they get the tonnage out of it. It's an 80 metric ton press brake. Now that we've got a more capable press brake compared to that Bailey that we started with, I am way more likely to design more complex formed components for grinders now. If you look at the grinder, almost every part on there has a bend in it somewhere that we form on this machine. Once you have your own laser shop, as you start seeing problems that you didn't see before, we used to buy a ton of carts from Uline. You can never have enough carts, but they weren't configurable enough to what we wanted. So we actually designed our own cart system that we've been experimenting with that we've really been liking. We made a ton of carts, and we've even adapted them to do weird things like this. This is the same system you see here with the same corner pieces, the same hole pattern. And we made a press brake tooling storage out of it and tall racks, and we've been using the heck out of our own carts, trying to see if anybody else needs the same thing, because carts are expensive and they don't do very much, but these things we're trying to make do a lot, and a nice cart's just nice to work on. Diego's tapping some of our prototype parts for that attachment I was talking about. What's pretty cool is underneath the part that he's working on is a production fixture that we whipped up for ourselves too, that really helps us fly through some of the repetitive parts we have to tap. Like when we have to tap these threaded bars for the pedestals, each one gets 2 holes, and each pedestal stand gets 4 of these, and we go through hundreds of pedestal stands every month, so that's a lot of holes to tap, you know, around 1,000 holes a month just for this one part, not to mention all the fastback overlays and every other part that we tap. So we've got our tapping arm here. We've got this laser cut and press broke fixture that's kind of stays on there. It's got a big window cut out of it. So you throw one of those on, and now I can hold this many parts all at once. Instead of clamping each one in a vise individually, throw one plate over the top, clamp down that one plate, and now I've just fixtured that many parts, and I can just run around down the rows. It just really reduces the amount of handling you have to do for each individual part. To do a batch of a few hundred of these would probably take a few hours. Now they can get it done in like 30 minutes. And then our newest machine that we've been playing with is our new 12 kilowatt laser. It's a lot of power to handle. 4 times of what we used to do over there. And even over there we cut 3/4 inch steel. And over here, you can't cut that much thicker, but you can cut a lot faster. And we're still learning to play with it, and it's really upped our capabilities. It gives us redundancy, so if one machine's ever down, we can keep going on the other, and when everything's going well, we can cut twice as much, at least. And then over here in our last little corner we've saved space for is kind of just our welding and fabrication corner. This is where we weld all the pedestal stands together, all the legs, the pillars, the tension arms together over here. We try to minimize the amount of welding because it's really time consuming and causes warpage and stuff, but every once in a while you just need it. So we still have a corner where we are able to do that, and you can see we got a couple more belt grinders in the corner. Anywhere you're welding and fabricating, you need some grinders. We got a fastback and a 2x48 over here, so the whole lineup of Ameribrade history. When we only had the one laser, we used to store all of our material inside, but as we kept packing more and more equipment in here, we kept running out of room of where to keep the material. And over here, it's a lot more important to keep the material from rusting. I showed you we keep the material outside at my house, but a lot of that's aluminum, and the steel tubing gets processed so much it doesn't really matter if it gets a little bit of surface rust. Whereas over here, some surface rust ruins how it cuts, and a lot of our customers' parts don't get coated and they can't accept rust. So we have to store it in a way that's protected from the elements. So we came up with this solution. It's a sort of temporary solution until we can build more square footage. It's been a good solution for us. We took a storage container, cut out the side, and we added 3 roll-up doors so that we can seal it up. The morning dew will even cause surface rust, so we got to seal it up good enough to not get that morning dew. We mounted the roll-up doors actually above the container so we have full height so that roll-up the roll-up door isn't blocking the height access in and out. So that's where we keep all of our like ferrous alloys. And then we've got lots of potential for growth. We've got a couple acres here that we plan on building out more. We plan on building out here eventually and finding the right person to help us do that process. It's a little empty right now because we're reorganizing material. You can see they've got big stacks out on the forklift right now. Normally that container is packed to the brim and not enough room to store it all even in that. So hopefully you guys like seeing what we do here and everything that goes into producing the machines that we sell. It's a lot of work, but we love doing it. Having the capabilities in-house isn't necessary, and a lot of people do it other ways. It's possible, but that's what we love to do, and I think that's where our competitive advantage is. We can listen to what you guys want, and we can adjust. There's nothing holding us back from doing what we want to do with the machines because it's all within our control. So that's the way we like it, and hope you do too.